Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here. Before we kick off this week's episode, just a quick ask. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell to make sure that you never miss an episode, never miss out on any of the strategies and tactics that we're sharing to help you continue charting your own path to freedom. And if you'd like to go deeper with any of this, we've launched a free Facebook group, which you can join at pathtofreedom.com/group. And we've linked that in the show notes to make it easy for you to find. All right. Thank you again for being here. Let's drop in to the episode. All right. We're live. Hey, what's up, everyone? And welcome back to the Path to Freedom podcast. Today, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Carmelo Marsala. Carmelo is the founder and CEO of SprayNet, and one of the most fun guys to talk to. So I'm excited to have him on the podcast for the second time now. Carmelo, how are you, man?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. High expectations. I better be fun on this podcast.
Yeah, well, I have no doubt that that it'll be fun, and just your accent, gives you a leg up on most of the guests that I have on here. So you're starting ahead with that. But yeah, you and I met, I don't know, 4 years ago or so, probably somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Because you started your company SprayNet in Canada, and then you and I met shortly after you guys had started expanding via franchising in the US. And that was when you came on the podcast the first time, was shortly after that. So at least a few years have gone by since then.
Almost
you guys
3.
have grown a ton, and I'm sure learned a ton. So I thought it'd be interesting to have you come back on the show and just talk a little bit about, where SprayNet is today and some of the things that you guys have learned as you've really, taken the brand across North America. But for a starting point, because we have a lot more listeners of this podcast now than we did the first time you came on, give us kind of a quick overview. What is SprayNet? What do you guys do? And how do you do it differently from some of the other companies out there that could be, viewed as comparable?
Sure. So I actually was a student painting franchisee. So I was in the conventional painting space. And, we're using off-the-shelf products. We're brushing and rolling them. And I quickly realized that there was limitations to those, right? They scratch, they peel. They're not made to last forever. So I figured if I would spray these products on, they would. Also realize, well, yeah, I get a better finish, but they don't last as you would if you buy a brand new door or window. So we kind of started looking at, okay, how do they spray those in the factory? Can we bring that on site? And that's basically, a custom chemistry, smarter painting. That's basically what we do. So we take that factory finish, we bring it on site, we give a 15-year no-peel warranty. We make all the products, so they're all proprietary to us. So we've got a team of chemists here that are constantly optimizing those formulas. We've actually got 5 patents, 3 patents, 2 patents pending on our products and our processes.
Yeah, it's such a cool story, man. I like smile every time I hear it, because so like, how old were you when you started trying to figure all this out, right? Is there a better way to essentially make paint or coatings for walls and exteriors?
Yeah, I was actually 23. I started when I was 20, just painting, and then by 23 realized like I don't want to do this anymore this way. And I actually went to take a formulation course in Missouri, and the PhD teacher there told me what you're trying to do is impossible. And that kind of motivated me. I'm like, you know what? I'm sure it's possible. I just got to figure out someone who believes in me, and we can actually figure this out together. Yeah.
That's what I love about it, because I mean, most people would probably agree. Like, look, people have been painting things for a very long time, and the way we make paint is the way we make paint, right? But here you are, 23 years old, and you're like, nah, there's got to be a better way to do it. Let me go take a formulation course. And then you start hiring chemists, and now you've got your own proprietary coating line and multiple patents on it. You stay in touch with that professor?
No, I do not actually. You know what? I should probably give him a
You
call.
should probably reach out to him and let him know.
Yeah, exactly.
Let him know you've done the impossible. That might be.
That's funny.
He'd either love to hear that, or it might ruin his day, but either way, it'd be pretty funny to see
Funny,
how he responded.
funny side story on that, since you're speaking about fun. I was a bit disruptive in high school, and my chemistry teacher actually kicked me out of class and said, if you don't stop disrupting like this, you're not going to amount to anything. And funny enough, it's our chemistry teacher, right? So,
That is funny. That's ironic. Were
yeah,
you like into chemistry and stuff like when you were younger, or just it was through your experience painting that you kind of started
yeah.
looking into all this?
No, through experience. As I mentioned, I wasn't very into chemistry class. Clearly, I was disrupting. So yeah,
Cutting
yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah,
It's amazing how many people, I've met just throughout my time in franchising, and like a lot of them have, gone on to found their own brands, or be executives or CEOs of brands that got started in franchising through one of these college painting franchise. I know there's College Pro Painters. Is that the one that you were
That-
part of?
that's the
Yeah, I
one
think there's
actually.
another. I think there's maybe another one out there that's like a similar concept, but College Pro Painters is probably the biggest and
Yeah,
most well known.
yeah.
But talk about good experience at an early age.
It was amazing. Like I went to business school, but like I barely showed up to class because I was running my painting business, and that's where I learned everything. Like I
I
learned how
bet.
to
I
knock on
believe it.
doors, sell. Man, when I was 20 years old, I already had 15 employees, right? And I was like, I didn't really know what I was doing, but we just figured it out, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
I mean, look, I went to business school too. And I mean, I was just talking to someone about this the other day. Um, it dawned on me at some point in business school that, because the way we did it, like at our universities, you were a business major, but you picked like an emphasis, right? So my emphasis was marketing. And so I had all these marketing professors, and at some point it dawned on me, I'm like, none of these professors have ever actually done marketing for a company. Like they were all just PhDs, were teaching out of a textbook. And I had this one professor, I think it was an international business class, and he was a retired executive from the pharmaceutical industry. And I mean, he spent years like managing this company's entire Eastern European division, and this was while the Cold War was going on. He ran their entire South American division. Had to live in a house with like armed guards, and travel in an armored car because he was an executive from an American company, which made him a prime target for kidnapping in
Right.
Brazil, where he was living. Like, so this guy had real life experience, and that's how he was teaching, was through stories, and it was fascinating. But then at the same time, that highlighted like just how uninteresting uh, most of these other professors were, and they didn't have any real world experience. So, like if I could go back and do it again, knowing what I know now, I would have just skipped the whole business school part and gone and done something like you did, where, if I could have started my own deal when I was 19 or 20 and, gotten all of that experience, that's invaluable, man. I mean, that's probably put you light years ahead of most other people. And, what you've gone on to build with SprayNet is kind of a testament to that.
Honestly, that I think, you know, probably the best decision I've ever made. I talk about it all the time. And what's really, really cool too is the VP at College Pro, who kind of trained me and taught me how to run a business, is now our COO. So he's at SprayNet now, helping us
Wow.
grow the franchise here. So
That's incredible. That's
yeah.
incredible. So I don't want to get too into the weeds, and for those listening, I'm going to link the episode for the first time Carmelo was on the show, because I think in that episode we did spend quite a bit of time on the formulation of their product versus traditional paint and how it's different. But maybe tell us a little bit on two pieces here, just so we make sure the audience has a sense of what you guys do. How do you apply it, and how is that different? And then talk about some of the other, I guess, I don't know if you call it product lines or just other areas of someone's home that you're now able to cover in addition to just like, exterior paint.
Yeah, I guess at a foundational level, what makes it different is the example I like to give is like a latex paint. That you go to Sherwin-Williams, you buy an exterior paint, and it's made to go on essentially everything. But when you have a product that kind of fits on everything, it's not really intended for any specific surface. So we have custom chemistry for each surface that we do. So, brick is a specific product. For vinyl, we have a specific product. For windows, we have a product. For siding, we have a product. So we really have a product that's specifically tailored for each surface that we do. And then in order for us to make sure that that product dries and lasts forever, we weather adjust it on site. So we've got a software, franchisees go in, or their applicator goes in, enters in the ambient air conditions, and then it spits out what they need to do. So we also have two chemistries that we add in that either speed it up or slow it down, and that's what causes it to really coalesce as one film. That's it at a
That's
high level.
incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And you're obviously spraying this on as opposed to using brushes or rollers. Is the spray application that you guys do, is that similar to how someone would spray paint, or is it still a little bit different than spraying traditional paint? We'll get right back to the episode in just a minute, but if you've been considering business ownership, if you're already a business owner looking to expand and you're curious about franchising, I'd love to connect with you, answer any initial questions that you have, talk about a specific franchise, and detail the exact process that I use and have taken hundreds of people through to help them understand franchise ownership, find the right franchise for them, and conduct the necessary due diligence. Click the link in the show notes if you'd like to schedule a free, no obligation strategy call. I look forward to talking with you. And now back to the episode.
A little bit. Well, so the prep is a bit different, but the actual application, the actual spray application is relatively similar. The main difference being our distance from the wall. We formulate the products that spray closer to the wall, so we have less overspray. And the products, the rheology of the products, well, rheology is like, like when you have a bottle of ketchup and you shake it and then it becomes thin. So rheology is if you apply energy to something, the viscosity changes. So the rheology of the product is actually made to be able to spray from a closer distance, so you get less sagging and less overspray. So yeah, it's we actually don't typically hire painters. We want people who actually have no experience, so we can teach them kind of the SprayNet way.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that before, which does make sense. And then so I know you guys, probably since the last time you were on the podcast, you've got options for the roof now. You're doing like interior. You can essentially the equivalent of refacing cabinets, which I know is very expensive and also a pain to have done. There's a lot that goes into that. So like you guys are figuring out other applications where you can come in and use, this custom chemistry approach for different products, and as well as your application process.
Well,
what are like kind of the full product lines or different areas that you're able to provide a solution for at this point?
Well, it's really interesting because I actually this morning I realized we've been franchising for 10 years. So our
Wow.
first ever franchisee is up for renewal. So he's signing, and that's going to be our first renewal ever, which is crazy, right? Like that's
Yeah.
wild. That's been that long. And back then we barely knew anything about franchising, but yeah, it's been 10 years. So for the first 6.5 years of our franchise life, we were a seasonal business. We did exteriors, and that's it. So and up here in Canada, we had 4 to 5 months to do that. So we had 4 to 5 months to have a business that was financially sustainable for the entire year. And we did it, right? Like all of our franchisees started with just that exterior business. At one point we said, well, what can we do in the winter? And we looked into the cabinet space. And I was like, if we're going to do it the same way as everybody else, I'm not interested. But if we do something different, then, I go for it. So I started interviewing people who got their cabinets done. And there was kind of two customers. One who got them painted, right, with a brush and roller, or even sprayed on, but with like a Benjamin Moore product or whatever, a product you can get off the shelf. And, their main pain point was like, yeah, it looks good, but like it's scratched like after like, a couple of weeks. I've got kids, I've got a dog. It's all destroyed. I got to redo it again. Then you have this other class of customers that are like, well, we removed them, they sprayed them in a factory, and they came and reinstalled them. Their pain points were, well, the boxes don't look as good as the cabinets because they weren't sprayed in the factory. And I had no cabinets for like a month and a half.
Yeah, it's a long process.
Right. And then when they finally put them back, my house smelled like a body shop for like 3 to 4 weeks because it was outgassing in the house. So I said, man, if we can do this in 1 to 3 days, 1 to 2 days on site, no odor, create a process around that, create the chemistry, we'd be on something. Took us 2 years. We figured it out. And actually, more than half of our sales in the US currently come from our kitchen cabinet side of the business, which is interesting because I actually went to purchase a house, and the lady is like, I know you're looking at the cabinets of this house. I could tell you don't think they look that good, but I got a really great company for you that can fix that for you. And I'm like, who? So then she says SprayNet, right? And then my
No
wife
way.
starts laughing. Yeah, my wife
That's
starts laughing, and I'm like, yeah, like I tell her the story, and I'm like, so you must have heard about us from the exterior stuff. She's like, oh, you guys do exterior still? I'm like, yeah, that's what we've been doing for the last 10 years.
she just knew you as the cabinet company.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? So because it's relatively new. So, anyways, yeah, that's basically our second full service, and now our newest service actually we're actually doing a crazy one in Wisconsin right now, but we actually. So let me tell you the context around this story. So we had a huge job where they want to stain their brick, do their windows, do their siding, and the customer was about to sign this $20,000 job, and he's like, you know what? Him and his wife were like, my roof is green, it's not going to match. I'm not going to spend 30K to replace my roof. Forget it. So I'm like, what if I could figure out a way to change the color of your roof? I had no idea if it was possible, right? And he's like, I don't want to paint my roof. I'm like, no, it won't look painted. So I started researching how they make roofs, right? And then I saw that those granules, and I'm like, what if we could
Uh-huh.
take these granules and kind of glue them on? It wasn't as easy as we thought, but 4 years later, called back the customer. We sprayed all his other stuff and his roof, and that's now our newest service, right? So we regranule roofs.
Yeah, so I'd never heard the story of how you guys decided to start trying to find a solution for the roofs, but it make like so first of all, I'll say this because I'd never really put a lot of thought into it, but we've been building a house. We just finished it and moved in about 2 months ago at the time that we're recording this. And so custom house, right? We got to design everything from the ground up. And so there was a lot of time that went into selections and picking different color schemes. And so at some point in the process, our builder's like, hey, what color roof do you want? And I was like, do people have different color roofs? Like I've never really paid attention to. I thought shingles were just all kind of the same colors. And that ended up being one of the probably one of the tougher decisions that we had to make throughout this whole process was, looking at all the different samples of different shingle colors. And, we did a couple sections with the metal roof, and anyways, it was not as straightforward as I would have imagined. So, I can see where, if someone's looking at changing the exterior color of their house, wanting to make sure that the roof kind of, matches or syncs up with it is important. So with the roofing product, is it just aesthetic, or are there any other benefits that kind of come
So
with someone spraying your product on their roof?
you took the words out of my mouth. That's where I was going with this. So, like, initially, it was just like, hey, we want to not lose these jobs and change the color. And then we realized all these collateral benefits, like impact resistance, 3 times that of a grade 4 roof, wind resistance. Like, we put it through a tunnel test at 110 miles per hour, zero delamination, a regular roof just kind of completely ripped off.
Really?
You know, right? Like, perm rate, good. But the most important ASTM test that we did was granule loss. We actually had 95% less granule loss than a regular roof. Now, what most people don't know is the reason why roofs actually start to deteriorate because when those granules start falling off, the asphalt is exposed to the UV. That's what ends up drying it out. It cracks, it curls. You need to replace your roof. So essentially, if the granules don't come off, in theory, your roof will last forever.
Huh.
So yeah, so which was a huge benefit, and now that's leading to all kinds of conversations with restoration companies, with insurance companies, with
Bet.
yeah, a lot of big box stores too. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, super interesting. Yeah, it's cool the way it's evolved, right? Because I think when you and I first met and you came on the show, like you guys were really just an exterior company, essentially trying to get the word out that, hey, there are other options for the outside of your house than just,
Right.
traditional paint options. And it was still very cool and very revolutionary because, like, I think, you gave the example of, like, we can come in and change the color of your house if it's brick or if it's stucco, which a lot of paint is not going to be a good application for. And a lot of painting companies, especially if they're high integrity companies, wouldn't even take those types of jobs because
Right.
they know their product's not going to be a good solution and going to last. But the way you guys have found other applications, and then to hear that, the cabinets is half of your business, approximately across your US franchisees, That's wild.
It is. It's crazy, especially down south, because it gets so hot in the summer that like it's funny. It's the inverse of what we do here. So in the summer they
Yeah.
actually do cabinets, like in Arizona, and it's yeah. It's just a very interesting just because of the geography, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So then I gotta ask and fully understand if you can't share, but like, so what's next? I know the way your mind operates. I know you're not gonna settle for just exterior cabinets and roofs. So what's the next innovation that you've got up your sleeve here?
It's funny because I literally just wrote a newsletter saying, "Hey guys, we need to kind of switch over from like a founder-led organization to a CEO-led organization. And if I put my CEO hat on, it's like we've got all these amazing services and we're not leveraging them yet. So there's no point in layering on like a million other things yet. Let's really maximize what we already have. So
Yeah.
like I've learned to try to like, because that question comes up all the time, right? Because everyone's like, well, you're obviously gonna come up with something else. I'd love to, but I don't think it's the right business decision right now. Like I think we really need to kind of capitalize on what we already have, and we're not even close, right? Like there's
Yeah.
so much white space.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and I would say it's probably a smart answer, even though I'm sure part of you is like itching to go out there and innovate something new and
Yep.
create something new. But plenty of time to do that in the future because I mean, look, I work with franchises that each do nothing but one of those different
Right.
verticals that you guys are into, and there's still big business potential with each of those. So with your franchisees having the opportunity to build a business with all three of those services under one roof, it's a massive opportunity.
So it's three franchises in one, literally. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you can make a business out of each and every one of those verticals. It's yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, huge potential.
So you mentioned earlier, which congratulations, 10 years in franchising, got your first franchisee coming up for renewal. That's a huge milestone that so many brands never even get to, right?
Right.
But like where is SprayNet at today in terms of how many franchisees in Canada, how many franchisees, open territories across the US at this point? We'll get right back to the episode, but I wanted to quickly share a free resource with you. If you're curious about franchise ownership and want to learn more about how countless people, including myself, have leveraged franchising as a way to create more freedom for themselves and to take control of their livelihood, I've put together an ebook. It's called Franchise Wealth Creation, and it's the perfect starting point for anyone that's just curious to learn more about this whole franchise thing and how I've helped hundreds of other people navigate all the steps involved in understanding and researching franchising. So click the link in the show notes, fill out a short form. I'll send you the ebook. I think it's a great starting point if you're curious at all about learning more about franchising. All right, let's get back to the episode.
So we've got 31 franchisees in Canada, and as of today, I believe we've got 37, if not 38 franchisees. I think there's one that we're adding like today or tomorrow. So yeah,
Nice.
so we've actually got more U.S. franchisees than we do Canadian ones, and it's getting pretty cool in the U.S. because for a long time most of our franchisees, well, still most of them are relatively new. I mean, I'd say 80% of them are still kind of in their first full year. But we do have some franchises getting out in their second year, and we're starting to see that same growth, but even better than it was in Canada. So it's really exciting to see. We're starting to get referrals from our franchisees for their friends to buy a franchise. So the ecosystem is really starting to build up nicely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting once, some of those earlier franchisees, when you came into the US now are starting to get a little bit of experience under their belt and they're starting to figure some things out. So sounds like you're kind of at that point where you got a lot of momentum that's been building and it's about to kind of take off. So like what are some of the biggest things that you've learned or some of the biggest differences that you see now building the business like this here in the US as compared to Canada? You mentioned one earlier where the seasons are kind of the inverse of each other, but is there anything else that's like, when you look at the business from an operational standpoint, the best way to market the business, like are there any other big differences between the US and Canada, or is it pretty similar?
I wish I had a really smart answer for you, but it's very similar. Honestly, the difference is here in Canada is obviously the weather, and our population is not as dense. So challenge we have here in Canada is you got to drive really far to get across your territory. Those are
Yeah.
challenges we don't have in the U.S. Also, things generally cost less in the US. Like labor is a bit cheaper, product is
Mm,
cheaper for our US franchisees. So generally they'll have a relatively higher gross margin. I would say the only thing that's slightly different in the US is the cost of online advertising is slightly more expensive. But it depends. Like, I mean, you've got big cities in Canada where it's through the roof too. So
sure.
I would say like those are the main differences. Other than that, I mean, look, people have homes both in Canada and the US. We watch the same media. We have a very similar culture. I didn't find it to be that big of a difference. I think the bigger difference that I did find, however, is in the US, our franchisees were different backgrounds. So we had a lot more like middle management franchisees looking to leave their corporate jobs, whereas in Canada it was a lot more of like younger entrepreneurs looking to just start something. And I think
Oh,
it's just the
interesting.
nature of, I guess, the maturity of our business in the US, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. So, um, do you see a difference in the in I mean, obviously we're talking generally here, right? There's always exceptions, but like, do you see a difference between those two different kind of franchisee profiles, and is one more attractive in your eyes over the other?
They're different. It's hard to say if one is more attractive than the other because they both have their pros and cons. But what I would
Yeah,
say though is, in Canada, when we started, literally our training was call me if you have any questions, right? Because most of these people,
yeah.
first of all, we didn't know how to be a franchisor, and a lot of these guys like had their own small business before, and they just wanted to like grow it to the next level, and they like the brand. Whereas in the U.S., what we realized is we really had to redo our entire training, right? It's like we've now have like a super extensive training, but like we didn't realize like some people don't know how to really read and dive deep into a P&L, right? How to make a
Hmm.
cash flow statement. Like we literally dove into every aspect of the business, and now we have modules for everything. We have training for everything. So that's what allows us to get people who've always only had a job and now kind of teach them how to run a business.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder, is there you think there's different expectations of what you're getting when you buy a franchise in Canada versus the US, or do you think it was more just the types of franchisees that you were attracting in Canada? They didn't need, maybe as much in terms of training and support,
Right.
or as much of it like put together in a neat little package.
Right. I think it's a few things. I think it's timing. Like 10 years ago, you didn't have Instagram, you didn't have this hustle culture of like where you had passive investments and Airbnbs and all of this stuff. So like there was less of that. I think in
Mm,
today's world, you see that all the time. You're like, well, maybe I could just throw money at something and it'll just like 10x. And it's not necessarily the case when
wouldn't
you buy
that
a
be
business.
nice?
Yeah, it'd be nice, but it's not always the case. So sometimes there are those types of expectations to kind of undo, and we try to really undo those throughout our development process to make sure that franchisees know what to expect going in. But even if I always tell my wife and I always tell everybody, it's like when you have your first kid, right? Everybody can tell you how difficult it's going to be, what it's going to be like, but until you have your kid, you don't realize like, oh
Yeah,
wow, okay, I'm not going to sleep
yeah,
for real. Right? They told me I
yeah.
wouldn't, but I'm actually not going to sleep, right? So same thing with having your first business.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a perfect analogy because you can do all the research, all the due diligence in the world, but until you're in it actually, I mean, there's just no way you can fully appreciate
Yeah.
everything that the business is going to entail. And I agree. I haven't really thought about it in those terms, but yeah, probably through the rise of social media, there's just a lot more going around about different investment types, right? And so, because I know it's something that you guys have to do. I have a lot of conversations with people where I'm kind of explaining, like, hey, a franchise is not a passive investment, right? Like, you know, and almost everyone that I talk to wants to, find a way to start a franchise while they keep their job. And it's doable in some types of franchises, but in other franchises it's not the right approach. And in either of those approaches, it's not fully passive, right? It's
Right.
not a passive investment. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I always tell people like you can do what you want as long as there's somebody driving the business. Like somebody needs to be driving this forward, and they need to have some skin in the game because otherwise, like I
That's the
always
key.
hear, yeah, I always hear from people like, why'd you get in franchising? Well, I'm tired of making somebody else rich. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, let's take that and now apply that to what you're trying to do. You're trying to get someone to do the same thing that
to,
you said you
to
hated.
help make you rich.
Right. So it's like you can't use that logic to work on you, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you need a driver who's got some skin in the game, right? So you're aligned.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that if you're going to delegate, the critical role of kind of, managing the business day to day, driving the business, like they have to be incentivized to think like an owner. Number one, because you're not going to get and keep the right type of person if you're just paying them a salary or some commission. But, number two, like if I'm the owner and I'm paying someone to run this business for me, like I need them motivated to think about controlling costs just as much as I am for them to think about growing the revenue, right? I mean, it's one thing to grow the revenue, but if you're not watching the cost side of the business and thinking like an owner, like you're not going to run a very profitable business in all likelihood.
Yeah, exactly. And as the owner, as the majority owner, you still have an important role to play, right? Like you still got to meet up with this person, coach this person, got to make sure that things are happening the way they need to happen, right? So yeah, you're not in the day to day as much, but you still have an active role.
Yeah, 100%. Um, how have you had to evolve your brand and your internal team to support the franchise network as it grows? You kind of talked about cost of goods earlier. You know, where is all this being manufactured? If you had to figure out how to set up manufacturing, here in the US to distribute product to your US franchisees, like what are some of the ways that the system has grown to support all of these
Yes.
franchisees now?
Yeah, since the first time we met, like we didn't have any of this stuff, but like we've really separated the two businesses now because the U.S. business is eventually going to be, bigger than the Canadian one. We have more franchisees, revenue is still higher in Canada because they're more senior. But yeah, we've set up U.S. distribution. We manufacture a piece of that in the U.S. So the way that we've set it up now is we manufacture the big, huge batches actually to my left here down the warehouse, and then we send that over to Florida, and that's where we can tint and that's where we can distribute from. So we've got a center in the U.S. where we distribute from. In terms of the team and the support, we now have 100% U.S. based team that's supporting our U.S. franchisees. So we've got a senior VP for the U.S. We've got a Canadian VP, and we've got a full support team in the U.S. So we've had to separate it just because both businesses are at different stages, whereas the Canadian franchisees are kind of in the optimization stage. They don't need the support that we need in the US. And the US franchisees kind of are all new, right? So they still have questions that are foundational to growing their business. They're not at the point yet where they're looking to scale. They're still kind of looking to build their businesses. So it's two separate and distinct businesses.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a whole lot of sense. So what other type of support is a franchisee getting, say after they've been through kind of initial training, now time to go home and actually open up the market? What what are they getting from a training and support standpoint on more of an ongoing basis?
So I'll keep it short because we do so much stuff. It's actually crazy. I was thinking about it the other day, but so just initial training is 1 week free training. So they go through all of our LMS. Then they have 2 weeks virtual training, which is half days every day on how to use our software, how to do quotes, how to do sales, how to build their cash flow statements. Then they do a full week at our Miami distribution center and training facility where they spray samples. They kind of get to touch and feel everything. Then after that, once we launch their marketing, we turn on their marketing. Then once they've got a backlog of 10 quotes, we go do the first 10 quotes with them. Once they've signed $50,000 in jobs, which usually takes about a month and a half, then we go and do those jobs with them. We send another trainer. So there's 2 visits, and then there's courtesy visits. But after that, we've got Viva Engage, which is like an internal Facebook page where all franchisees ask questions, and I chime in, other franchisees chime in. We've got what we call SprayNet GPT. So we actually take the Chat GPT algorithm. It's actually crawled all of our stuff, and it's literally 24/7 support. You ask it a question, it finds you the answer. It's actually incredible. We create a communication hub. We host mastermind groups. We have regional meets. We have our national convention. We have monthly webinars. We have quarterly newsletters. Honestly, we've come a long way. We didn't have not even a third of this like just 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, well, that's part of why I wanted to ask you about it, because I think it's important for people to see that the good franchises out there, they are continuously growing and evolving as the system grows, right? And it's like, last time you came on here and talked, like you had a good business, right? You'd been franchising for quite a while up in Canada at that point. It was newer coming into the US, but it was a good business. It was a good opportunity. And then, just listening to you very quickly talk about all these different layers of support that franchisees and their team members have, like, and a lot of that has come about over the last couple of years, right? Distribution centers in the US, building out an executive or a leadership team for the US, leadership team for the, like, this is what you should be looking for in a good franchise, right? Is not one that's gonna get it to a certain point and then say, all right, we're good enough, right? So now we're just going to kind of settle here, and we'll keep adding franchisees, but we're not necessarily going to keep reinvesting to grow the support for those franchisees.
Honestly, if a franchisee is willing to put in the work, we will support them 150% of the way, as long as they're willing to put in the work, right? Like, no franchisee is willing to put in the work will tell you we don't support them. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, we
yeah,
definitely go above and beyond on that front.
yeah. Well, I mean, franchisees always got to hold up their end of the bargain. I use the bicycle analogy all the time, right? It's your job as the franchisor to build the best bike and show them how they can go ride it. But the franchisee's got to get on the bike and pedal it. That's the only way it's going to go anywhere.
My analogy I show is actually a bit different from a bike. It's a Ripsaw EV2. It's the world's fastest all-terrain vehicle. I said that's what we
Oh
provide to
man,
you.
that's so much cooler than mine. I'm gonna have to.
You should check
Here
out the
I am just talking
Ripsaw.
about bicycles, and you're talking about the fastest all-terrain vehicles in the world.
It's nuts. It's like a tank, and it goes like I think 60, 70 miles an hour. It's crazy.
All right, I'm gonna have to step my analogy game up a little bit
Yeah,
then.
exactly.
Speaking of franchisees doing the work, so like as you kind of described where your system's at in terms of number of franchisees and kind of tenure of these franchisees, what are your best franchise owners? You don't have to share any numbers or anything like that, but like what are your best owners spending most of their time on? Because I would imagine your owners that are not as successful, they're spending a lot of their time and energy in different ways and on different parts of the business than your owners that are the most successful. So like, what's the best use of that time for your
They're
top performers?
they're building teams. They're building a sales team. They're building production teams, and they're investing in marketing. Right? Like it sounds simple. It's just very difficult to do. But like our
Yeah,
top franchisees have like 2 or 3 top sales guys who are doing 1 million plus like sales per year. Right? And they've got really top production managers. They've got really great team leads that if you go read the Google reviews, the customers always mention those team leads. Right? So it's like the top guys are building great teams. And I think it's not just a franchise and not just a SprayNet. It's any business, any
yeah,
organization. You build a great team, sky's the limit, right?
yeah. When you talk about sales, are you guys predominantly doing residential work at this point, and is most of that retrofit, or do you have franchisees that are getting into new construction at all? What does that kind of look like?
So, earlier on when you mentioned like what's the next thing? The next thing would be commercial industrial because that's like low-hanging fruit for us because we would just have to
Yeah.
tailor the products a little bit. Right now, 95% of our business is residential. The reason
Okay.
for that is the commercial side of things. We'll do some small commercial, but the big commercial stuff, it's a different business, a wholesale business, what I like to call it. We're in
Yeah.
the retail business, right? We get paid at the end of the day, margins are higher, simpler jobs. Where some franchisees will go and sign a $200,000 job, and then it's like your crew's there for like so long when you could have been
Yeah.
doing all these residential jobs at higher margins and not tying
Yeah.
up all your cash flow, right? So
Yeah.
we do have some bigger franchisees now that are starting to really get more serious about commercial stuff as they grow their business to multi-million-dollar levels, right? But initially you want to really focus on the residential stuff.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. The commercial stuff, while I'm sure there's plenty of opportunity for it, that's not probably where a franchisee should be focused in their first couple of years. Like you probably almost need to get to the point where you can have a commercial division within your company, and that way you're not missing out on all the residential work, just so we can put all hands on deck over here to knock out this commercial job. And it's tempting for a franchisee, right? You get the chance to bid a $200,000 job and you're like, oh shit, that's
Yeah.
juicy. Let me go get that.
Yeah.
But to your point, if that's a month to do it and that's all you do in that month, how much work at a better margin are you maybe passing up?
And not just that, there's the opportunity cost of the margin, but also in a month, you could have done, I don't know, 20 homes, let's say 30 homes. That's 30 lawn signs. That's 30 customers that can refer you. That's what builds the momentum in your earlier years. So we want to take even small jobs because lawn signs create jobs, right? Jobs create jobs. So that's kind of, and one thing too, that the word I like to use a lot is cannibalization. As we start to add more things and layer things, what are you cannibalizing, right? What are you not doing that you would have done otherwise? And that's what we want to avoid, is how do we really leverage everything that we have without cannibalizing certain services?
Yeah, those are both good points. And you mentioned cash flow too. Like it's
Yeah.
tough on these larger jobs because you're probably not getting paid up front anything. You're probably not getting paid along the way. You're lucky if you're getting paid anything along the way. And then you're probably waiting 30, 45, 60 days to get paid
Sometimes
once
90,
you've done the
120,
work.
it stretches to 180 and you just floated that job for like, 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can, a younger business in their first couple of years, that can be devastating. But yeah, the cannibalization point is interesting. Like the franchise my wife and I own, Shelf Genie. So we do custom pull out shelving. And then we got into closets a few years ago where we're doing like custom closet systems. And, that's something that does kind of come up from time to time, right? Where, we'll go out to a client's home to look at, say, a closet, and then we'll, also kind of make them aware of what we can do in the kitchen or the pantry or whatever with the pull out shelves. And sometimes you may get one job but sacrifice the other. Sometimes you get them both,
Yeah.
right? Which is the whole benefit of like kind of being able to offer both. But definitely we've seen times where they opted to go with one, but that meant they couldn't do the other.
Right. And that's okay. It's not as bad. What I'm talking about is we have some franchisees that start focusing on kitchen cabinets, right? And they get really good at selling them. They get really good at producing them,
And they're
and then
not
they
even
don't.
thinking about the other
Right. They're
stuff.
not even thinking about the exterior. So then, like, they don't wrap that part of the business up. And that's kind of what's a shame because it's such a great business in and of itself too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we have to figure out, well, how do we make sure that they're leveraging all of the businesses that we have, not just focusing on one of them.
Yeah. Smart. Makes a lot of sense. What are and look, this will probably come out sometime in September or October of 2024. So if you're listening to this much later than then, this may not be relevant, but like what are some of the key markets in the US that you guys, really need to have a presence in that you don't yet?
I would say like, in the West, we're not very present, but actually started. So we've got one in Portland now. We've got one in Utah, Arizona, but like, everything West, we don't really have much. And look, we have 30, 37 franchisees. There's a ton of white space. Like even the big markets, there's room for more franchisees. So like all of Texas, all of Florida, we've got a few franchisees, but not much. Like I don't think there's one major market where there's no more room, right? Like,
Right.
if there's one franchisee, there's room for two more, right? So there's a lot of white space.
Is there any particular, I know you mentioned that you kind of have a different profile of Canada, of franchisee in Canada versus the US, but like is there any particular background that you've seen translate exceptionally well to this business in terms of like career background or skill set or experience?
It's tough because I want to say one, but it doesn't always work, right? So I'm always gonna
Yeah.
say everything with a caveat, right? But like, if someone's good at sales, and they're young, ambitious, good at sales, if you're able to generate sales, usually you're able to figure out the rest. If you can't
Yeah.
figure out that part, there's a lot of people that can do the jobs, but they can't sell, right? So it's like we
Yeah.
teach them how to sell, but like you want those guys that are ambitious, that are going to go above and beyond. Like we've got a franchisee that did an event and they did a kitchen event, not even an exterior event. They got almost 200 people to come to that event, see the process, see the final product, and sign 20 jobs from it. So it's like you need the
20
people that are going to do
jobs.
that. Yeah, it's
Holy,
nuts.
yeah.
And guess what? Those jobs will create other jobs, right? So it's like those are the kind of things that you want people that have a business development background that are not afraid to do that kind of stuff because it's scary to do that, right?
Well, sure,
Um,
and like, yeah, you put together an event like that for the first time, and maybe nobody shows up.
right.
Okay, but like, what's is there more downside with that versus the upside that this guy had with signing 20 jobs out of it? Like, you got to be willing to just try stuff, and if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Take it, learn from it, but continuously, like, my wife's done such a good job of that in our Shelf Genie business, and the results that it's helped us yield over the years in that business are tremendous. So yeah, you got to be willing to put yourself out there and just find creative ways to spread awareness, because this is where, like, these service businesses, even within a franchise, are different from, like, oh, I own a McDonald's,
Right.
or because
Subway, whatever. Yeah.
they're gonna, there's not a whole lot that a McDonald's franchisee can do outside of
Yeah.
whatever the McDonald's system is already doing to, like, make more people know about McDonald's or more people want to
Exactly.
come. But, like, with these service businesses, like, you guys have systems, processes, best practices, all types of support, I'm sure, when it comes to, like, the marketing and advertising side of the business. But there's still so much room for a franchisee to kind of think creatively, put their own style on the business, and go out there and find unique ways to create relationships and spread awareness to the business. So, something I point out to people, because every now and then you talk to someone, they're like, I just, I don't think I'd like owning a franchise. It doesn't feel entrepreneurial enough to me. And so I kind of point out some of these things that, like, yeah, there probably are some franchises out there where you'd be miserable because you just have no wiggle room,
Right.
in terms of how to operate the business. But then there's others where, you know, you're going to see the best franchise owners in the brand, being very entrepreneurial and thinking outside of the box. So it's an
It's fun.
interesting dynamic.
It's funny that you mentioned McDonald's because I feel like that's one that creates false expectations too. It's like, franchisee will be like, well, open my doors. And now everybody's calling and all the leads are pouring in. They're like, oh, well, like people don't know us in our territory. I'm like, people don't know you in any territory that you open. Like, it's not like we don't have brand recognition. Even the biggest franchisors, like they don't have, brand
Yeah.
recognition in the service space, right? It's local markets. And it's funny that launch marketing that we now, we've actually added that to our launch marketing. We created a process around how to hold events, where to advertise for those events, how to get people at those events, how to close people at those events. We have creators for those things. So, like, you speak about being entrepreneurial. Those are the kind of things that franchises brought to the table, and now
Yeah.
we use as best
Now it's a
practice.
staple in the
Yeah,
business. It's a best practice. It's part of the training. Yeah,
right.
I mean, that's how the best brands, continue to evolve.
Yeah,
That's really cool, man. Well, look, I
yeah.
could talk to you about this stuff for hours, but I know you're a busy man. Real quick, where can people go? And I'd encourage people to do this. Like, go on to SprayNet's website. They've got a bunch of cool videos up there that, go into more detail about, the actual chemistry, how this product is different. You'll get to see some cool, like, before and after pictures, which I think really drive home, like, how powerful some of this stuff is. Go check it out. Where would be the best place for people to go and, like, actually see and visualize some of what you've been talking about today?
Yeah, I think our website is the perfect hub because then there's even like a franchise link there that brings you to franchise website. Our YouTube page has a ton of videos, ton of
Yeah.
content there. If you're on LinkedIn, follow us on LinkedIn. We're always posting on there. Um, there's a ton of information online.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
Spraynet.com.
spraynet.com.
All right. We'll put it in the show links. And Carmelo, thank you, man. I always enjoy talking with you. And man, it's been fun watching SprayNet grow over the last few years. Congrats on 10 years. That's so cool. And we'll have to have you on again here in a couple more years, and you can tell us how much more the brand's grown since then.
Sounds good, man. Thanks a lot for having me.
You got it.